Yeah, we'll drop the link to our Discord channel where we've got a live conversation going, and everybody can post up their questions and, obviously provide some input into the WebXR community and all the things that we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, we'd really love to hear, and feel free to drop in the chat cool WebXR business use cases you've seen or websites you've seen. You can still go to the event page and add in any business use cases you've thought of, because we'll be highlighting any cool ones that come up as we're discussing things today. Great, there it is in the chat. Perfect. Hopefully next year we'll be doing this all in WebXR.
That'll be exciting.
Right?
Yeah.
We're close.
I know, we're so close. We're so close. Maybe this is like the last time, before the end of the summit, so it'll be like less 2D.
The last silly 2D thing we do. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Love it.
It's got to happen sometime.
It will. It will. Absolutely. Right. We've got so far 25 people in here. So.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll just give everybody a couple more minutes to get in.
Oh, me and all my tabs.
So if everybody takes a look at the chat, we've just dropped, we're going to be using a program today to engage your feedback into this session. And we're going to start asking questions and hopefully kind of feed on, the participation of today to help foster the conversation. So if everybody takes a look, CrowdPer will be our live engagement to get some answers from you and see how you're using WebXR and obviously all the data behind that as far as where you are in the world and what you're working on, so that we can curate some of these conversations. So there is a link and the code there to engage in today's conversation.
Here we are at 9 a.m. So use that. We'd like to get this poll going in a second here. Looks like we have quite a few people. Should we kick it off?
Sorry. Yeah, it's right 12 o'clock. So why don't I'll introduce you, Samantha. Samantha is going to be hosting today, Samantha Mathews and myself, and I think Linda Ricci is also going to be jumping in. But Samantha, please take it over and lead us in this town hall discussion about WebXR.
Fantastic. Well, hi everybody. I'm Samantha Mathews. And I'm really excited to be here. I started working in WebXR a little too early, about 2015, 2016, working with Janus VR, which was the first completely 3D web browser built from scratch. And spent about a year working in WebXR, meeting in WebXR, and building out all sorts of use cases. And use cases are my favorite way of grounding technology to other folks that maybe aren't interested in it. I think it's the best way to ever sort of describe how something can show up in someone's life and they can see it for themselves is a really good use case or a good user journey. So I hope we can get into some of those today. But more than anything, I'm just so excited that there's such a big group of people that are supporting WebXR now, to see it have grown to such a massive community, to have people like this great team that's putting this together, put together polys and start to recognize people in the community. This is only just the beginning, and I'm so thrilled and honored to be here. I really want to thank our Galaxy sponsor, FutureWay. This wouldn't be possible without support from them, and more than anything, support from you guys showing up here, 9 a.m. PST, noon, wherever you are, and from all over the world. We really do have people joining us from everywhere. And let's see where everyone's from. Let's start this off by getting a poll going. Do you want to put that up in the screen again? We'd love to find out where everyone's joining us from this morning. So if you just go to the CrowdPer link and enter in where you're from, and then we'll start to see everybody. And the sort of, you know, this is a discussion for everybody, so it's not going to be too tightly scheduled or anything like that, but we would like to go through a few topics that we've discussed prior, which is managing expectations, starting off there, like really, where are we for real, not where do we want to be, and how do we get people starting to feel comfortable with such a new stack, such a new technology, and then working into enterprise and procurement, sort of the financial, technical, and security side of WebXR, and then getting into maybe interoperability of systems, ethics and standardization, data collection, best practices, whatever you guys want to talk about, we'll go from there. So do we have the results of our poll?
They're still coming in. I'm just, yep, still coming in. And I guess just to give a little bit of premise to today's conversation, you know, on September the 14th, we have the business summit, where this is the reason why we're having today's conversation, is to build up the expectations, to understand and listen and hear what is going on in your world, so that we can try and focus our directives for that day into into the right conversations. So, you know, as you said, managing expectations. This was a big conversation that you and I had the other day in our call with the group, Samantha, and just, you know, let's start there. And maybe while some of these, you know, some of the poll questions are coming in, I know from my own perspectives, just trying to, you know, manage the expectations of the enterprise community right now, when they're struggling to understand what the best practices are, how to follow standards that they've had implemented into their systems for years and years, sometimes decades. Disruption is really the key here of, you know, what is happening, and you know, how do you manage the expectations of an enterprise community when they are unsure about what is best for the company, and they're leaning on startups where, you know, we always say we're building the plane as we're flying it, right? And learning every day from all the technologies and how they integrate and weave in between systems that have been there previously. So a lot of learning is going on, and maybe that's something that we can ask our community, is what is that big challenge in managing expectations with enterprise right now?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the community on that, and people who have been out there selling it. I know for me, when I was starting out, the challenge was, especially with the WebXR side, is you have all these AAA game studios with these apps and this different model where the web, you have only a certain amount of bandwidth and that you can use to create. And so getting people to sort of the trade-off between the quality or the style versus like the reach that the web can get, and how you can find that sweet spot. I know that a lot of what I find frustrating, I think, in the experiential community is this innovation peddling. You know, this idea that you can just download or buy a few stock videos of somebody with some big fancy interface and make it look like it's, you know, Iron Man, and people get, you know, enterprise customers or people expect this just like Iron Man experience, and then you're like, just kidding, it's the web. And that was a really big frustration, because I see that happen a lot, where somebody will start a company or an XR company, and then they make all this mock-up version of their product, this sort of ideal, like aspirational kind of selling of what's to come. Really does us a disservice for where we are now, because where we are now is incredible. Like what we can do on the web is insane. But and it is also one of those things where you don't have the rendering power of a big game engine, and so you don't get to sort of give those experiences that people have become accustomed to seeing. So that was always a challenge for me, and I'd love to hear how some people are getting around that, or setting people up for to expect to see what they're going to see, as opposed to something fantastical.
Hey, Samantha, we have those test results.
Oh, fantastic. Test results, that sounds so serious. Where are you from? Wow, look, Sao Paulo, wow, all over the place. And we'd love to run one more so we can get an idea of how to best steer our programming. We'd love to know what kind of, do we have the poll ready for what you do? Are you in marketing? Are you in sales? Are you a creative? Just that we'd love to understand where the crowd is coming from a professional standpoint in relation to WebXR. So I'm not sure if we have that poll ready yet, but I can see that we have people from all over the world. So thank you to those who are joining us from funky time zones, because that's not fun. That takes dedication.
I think they're running that one now, so
okay,
you'll start to
great.
see. Yep, you'll start to see. Oh, there we go. It zigzagged over to this one. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay, cool. Marketing.
Oh, developers. We got lots of developers in our community.
We do have a decent amount of sales, though. I'm interested to hear about the sales and marketing side, and where people have sales and business development. Hey, all right, creative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is great. I think
a lot of developers, because we need a lot of development.
Yeah, we do. And obviously the developers and the sales teams starting to work a lot more, together, because of that managing expectations and what the enterprise or the business level is looking for, what the developers can produce, and that meets their expectations. So it's great to have a mixed variety of people that are here today to understand the different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the lessons that I've learned even from my own company is, first of all, teamwork. It's like, teamwork is never a doubt, but more than ever right now is having these different departments work together to manage those expectations of delivery and of integration, and the challenges that these enterprise companies are feeling behind the scenes as they start to work, especially with WebXR and the firewalls. That's a huge piece that I'm personally dealing with in some of the projects right now is how do you collaborate with enterprise and business teams as we're developing, WebXR applications for their business use cases. And some of them are in training, some of them are in marketing, and some of the things that I've recognized is training is a very secure place, right? Because you're dealing with SSOs, single sign-ons, and the collective nature of the performance of that employee within that, that particular application that you're building. And there's kind of this lock in the business world, in the enterprise world, of having these firewalls using WebXR, because you have to go through all of their systems, whether it be so sometimes they've got learn on demand systems, or, they've already got a training system that's attached to their enterprise system, and they want to integrate some of these immersive experiences of training into their processes. So WebXR isn't quite applied to some of the use cases that I'm dealing with because of these firewalls. So how does that, what is the progress there? And I think it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time, because right now all the walls are up, and these businesses are being very protective of their systems and not understanding how to formally integrate them. Now dealing with a marketing application, that's, this is game on. This is where WebXR is applied, because you don't want any barriers to that user opening up that experience and having that roadblock of an app. And this is where WebXR does take place. It does take hold. So to me, I see there's two different scenarios here. One is that training scenario of using WebXR, but you have the firewalls of all of the enterprise systems. Mm-hmm. And then there's the marketing applications where you are not dealing with any of these firewalls. You just need to have that user experience that product or, that service that they're offering, and without those barriers. So WebXR, I personally see as, being very much integrated into the marketing world. It's, but then, training is another story altogether. So I don't know if anybody else has, any other comments, and this is where
this is where we want to talk to you.
Yeah, we would love to talk to you and see if anybody else would like to maybe jump in with an experience that they have that we can tackle or try and address.
You brought up two great verticals. That you brought up sort of training, right, and the challenges there, and then you on the marketing side. Then there's also sort of like this. The part that I had success with my company was the actual infrastructure side of the web. So the idea that I could have an entire web server on a Raspberry Pi and put that out on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and all those people could join from their devices. The fact that I could put an entire web server together with a school inside and drop that off with solar power in the middle of nowhere, and just anybody around it with their devices could connect to that, because this is the beauty of the web. A web server, we've got Wi-Fi. You don't have to be connected to the World Wide Web. You can make these intranets, right? You can make private webs. And this is where I like one of the biggest breakthrough moments for us. We were giving, I think it was the very first VRTO, and we were doing a hacker's guide to the metaverse, and there was no internet in the basement where we were giving the workshop, and we're like, well, how are we supposed to give a workshop on WebXR with no internet? Well, we did it. We put all these worlds onto little private servers, onto just little Raspberry Pis. Everybody joined to those servers with their computers, and we had 14 people in one little Raspberry Pi building WebXR. That's incredible to me. Like the lightweight nature of the web, and then all the years of infrastructure that we've built with all these billions of people that are about to come online with mobile phones and gain access to the web. Like, that's huge for me. And the lightweight nature of the infrastructure side, I'd also love to hear about too, because you can just take it anywhere with you in your pocket. You have the metaverse in your pocket in a way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know our team has the next poll ready, which talks about verticals, which, just to find out the different, verticals that everybody's in. So here we go. Here's another crowd vote. If everybody can let us know what industry, where are you coming from? What perspective are you, are you joining us from today, so that we can see which industry you're in. So the code is there on the bottom, and we've got a lot of other. What's the other?
I want to know what those others are.
What do we do with the other? Okay,
I like seeing the other. There's nobody with the DoD government use case. I'm surprised, because that has been a huge place for WebXR, is in rapid prototyping and in simulation and DoD exercises for simulation training. Rapid iteration, that was the other thing that we got. I think the first thing I got paid for with WebXR was building a weed world for Action Bronson while he watched Ancient Aliens on Vice. So it was basically like, hey, can you come in today for $1,500 and make like a trippy world for all these rappers? And the answer was yes. And we made it in an hour. And not only did we make it in an hour, we were making it while they were inside, like, here he is in his headset.
Building the plane as you fly it.
Yeah, like dropping fried chicken into a WebXR world, and like just, you can make things so fast with WebXR. It's brilliant. And there's nothing like it.
And not only make things, but update things.
Yes.
Right? like
Yes.
updating experiences. I'm dealing with a client yesterday. We went through, we found a few spelling mistakes, a few grammar errors. And, they were like, so is it a week before we get this back? And it's like, nope, it'll be done overnight. We'll update all these text changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, certainly speed is one of the biggest benefits to publishing these experiences live again and keeping them going. I do want to just address the chat because our other was so big. People have commented that we've got people from finance, training simulation, public media and entertainment, gaming, arts and culture. And yes, they wear a lot of hats. So it looks like we have a bunch of really interesting perspectives, and some from the creative, some from the operational. We've got media and entertainment, as I said. It's interesting to see the different perspectives, and obviously a lot in the arts world that just trying to use WebXR to the biggest potential that they have.
It's awesome. So we'd love to see some questions come up. We have one here from Liam. Would love to know more about how everyone runs customer life cycle. It feels really special with our XR. I'll give a little detail. Starting with sales pipeline, qualifies leads, does memos, starts engagements, breakdowns, projects like milestone, test projects internally and with clients, and deploys. So I'm wondering, how many people here have actually delivered something in WebXR? What was your experience there? And in terms of how you run it towards a customer sales cycle. Maybe Liam can give us a little bit more specificity in terms of what he, are you talking about just any type of experience in WebXR, or like as a
how it is general. We use the same pipeline for entertainment to commerce. That's a lot of where we focus, and some of the little oddballs on between. But we've changed what's like really a qualified lead and how educated the customer has to be for expectations. Like every part of this is, I could talk for 10 minutes on, and I would love to hear, I would love to hear more about how other people are doing this. Excuse my horrible hair. I'd love to hear more about how everybody's doing this, because I've talked to a lot of people who've been doing Unity consulting, and they're kind of like scratching their heads on how to do some of this with WebXR. Big one that we ask ourselves like literally yesterday is, how many meetings do we do before we throw them in an experience and let them have calibrate their expectations? And what do we do when they're disappointed and it doesn't look like Unreal Engine 5, or if it does, so.
That's interesting, because I think what I see a lot of people that are offering the whole gamut of of WebXR, as opposed to like a experience or a feature from within. And this is where I'm interested to learn, are people offering like WebXR as WebXR? Are you saying we can do anything? Or are you offering it like a suite of tools, as if you're sort of a 3D studio, but using the web as a game engine versus another one? Is that what you're saying, kind of like as an agency that creates experiences for other brands? I don't know if you're
a bit of both, there's definitely different needs for when developing something internally and developing it, for a brand or in a team. Right now I'm like I'm a subcontractor, and I'm coaching the parent contractor on how to set expectations, and how to like nursemaid people through this, and how to even like walk them through how to use a demo, or how to use a Quest to run a demo, because they don't really know how to. Like a lot of what we do is sending headsets around. There's so many unknowns right now. You have to, it's like, Sam, when you and I were, it's like when Blantron was happening. It was a lot of stuff that like we were still figuring out as the project was going on, about like how many people can we have in the room? How stable is it going to be? We don't have all the devices that everybody's going to use. So we got to test what we can test, It's really bleeding edge.
I think that's the main thing is like what I hear you talking about is like the full experience of WebXR. And I think that's where a lot of people run into issues is like you only have so much bandwidth. You're really having to work for the lowest, crappiest phone or the lowest, crappiest experience and make sure that it's great within that. And I think I mean, this happened for me for years with Janice. I think it happened on our project. Like when you try and give somebody the full WebXR experience, it can blow up in your face. I think that, you know, like the idea that you can have chat or voice or all these things, like because and I ran into this over and over again. We had this funny meme at Janice called "It's a Game About Nothing" with like Jerry Seinfeld in the front, because it literally was just like, you can hang out on the web, you can do anything you can do on the web, but in 3D. And that like breadth of experience, it really, it becomes very challenging because you're now managing all sorts of different variables. And I think that this is where I see WebXR succeeding is if developers can break it into pieces and chunks and offer those things as features. Like, do you want to have an immersive space or a lobby that people can explore? Great, start there. Do you want to have a social experience? Okay, let's make this closed. Let's max it out at 15 people and have it spawn multiple rooms every time it maxes out. Like, what we have to choose these kind of like features that we agree on, test, and sell. I think to me, this is how I manage expectations, which is like, you're not going to get it all at once. And if we continue to try and sell WebXR all at once, it's going to keep embarrassing us, I think. That's my personal opinion. Mm-hmm. I think we need to break it into all of the elements that you can have and then turn those things on in the appropriate moment once they're tested.
So Shaw calls it unity times 3. Like, take everybody who wants to, you want to do a race car game? Okay, well, most of the clients think it's going to cost, that race car game is going to cost $50,000. Well, in WebXR, it's going to take 3 times longer. It's going to cost 3 times as much money. It's going to have 3 times as many bugs, but 5 times as many people will show up to the app. You know, so it's like, anyway.
So if I can just jump in here, I know Yinch, if you're there, we would love to hear about your example. You developed a pilot for a client, and it was Unity built development. Are you there? And if you'd like, you can share with us your experience.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yinch. I work for a company called Playco. It's my company called Playco. And I just want to describe a project I did quite recently for a flight training company that trains commercial pilots. We built a procedural trainer based on their training manual, where we basically replicated their manual on a VR iPad, which had certain sections they wanted people training in, and they would use WebXR to sit in an Airbus 320 cockpit and test themselves over the procedures of starting up aircraft. And this was it had every dial and every switch, and the system that we were substituting or we were replacing or taking the load of was an actual $1 million flight simulator. So I want to mention this project to say that it is possible to deliver that sort of quality, like final commercial grade quality, to in WebXR. You can't do it trivially. You have to understand some optimizations. I'll come back to that separately. But I just want to say that it is possible, and the clients are very, very pleased with it. And the use, and it highlights a couple of things. One, which is that you can hardly ever get a client of any sort of substantial size to agree to use a feature if it doesn't solve a problem for them. Everything eventually has to be demand driven. Eventually, we are early adopters. We like to do things just because they're there, but we're different from the people that we're sort of selling to. And the fact that we say, "Oh wow, this is fantastic! Wouldn't it be great if we can do this?" Every time I talk to any of my clients, and I don't always talk to the CFO, I understand that somebody is behind the scenes tapping them on the shoulder and says, "Why are you spending this money? You know, because I'm not going to give you new money. If you want to spend this money, Bob, or whoever it is, you need to take it away from somewhere else and put it here. So you have to say where that is. And all this is from a book called Crossing the Chasm, which I read years ago, which described how as you went from early adopters to mainstream, there is this dip because the demand expectations change between one and the other. And we are approaching the chasm like right now in WebXR. Right now, you're trying to get past early adopters into the mainstream market. And one thing we really should try not to do is to make exactly the same mistakes, because it's been done, 40 times in the last 20 years. New technologies coming along saying it can do this, and the CFOs are saying like, well, you can spend whatever you like, but I'm not giving you any new money. So I almost always engineer my my projects or my pitches to organizations working backwards from knowing which budget I'm going to steal. I don't know. I said that you will. So one of my pitches at the moment is to ask them to use WebXR for design collaboration or product designs. And the idea is that when you have to do a product design for slightly larger companies, there's all visits. They travel in aircraft. They go. The design teams are often remote to each other. They drive to the airport. They fly a plane to another country. They drive to the company. They do their thing. They stay in a hotel. Then they drive back and they fly back. And I say, and so my most recent bids are to go after the transport budget of companies, to say to them, use WebXR instead of sending people in an airplane, because one air ticket will buy you a headset, one overnight will buy you another headset, and you can use it over and over again. So one of the attacks I've been using is to try to know for certain where I say what I can say they can stop spending money on to spend money on this. And for the pilot training, it was obvious, because it meant that they didn't have to buy another $1 million simulator. And I'm just running on the Quest. I wasn't running on a fancy. I wasn't WebXR. I've made VR on both native and WebXR, and I've also done some AR stuff. And Unity is not a strong candidate for WebXR just because of its WebGL exportation pathway. I had a short call with Unity last Thursday, and they know that to make good content in WebXR takes a combination of skills, which is it's rare. People who are from the web expect certain things in terms of the tools, and Unity people expect certain things in what they can do just like arbitrarily. But WebXR requires you to think like an old-time coder. How can I squeeze this? How can I squeeze that? Like to get the cockpit. The cockpit was originally made for PC VR, and it had
so many polygons, right? Like just polygons and polygons.
And so, in fact, one thing that really stunned me about the Quest is that even using single-threaded Unity, I managed to draw all the polygons on the PCVR on a Quest. And I was surprised. I had to do all sorts of optimizations to the draw calls. I got it from 800 draw calls down to like 7, and it worked. I know it was running, I don't know, 50, 60 frames a second. It wasn't flat out, but
Can I interrupt for 1 minute? I have a question for you, because you said you have to figure out where you're going to get the budget from.
Yeah.
What are the biggest reservations people have internally to adopting the WebXR? And what is your argument back to them? Like, what is your selling point to them? I'd love to hear that from other people as well. What are the barriers to the adoption on the business side? Not the developers, because developers probably get it, but I'm talking about the people who have the budgets potentially, and are the ones who are saying no. Like, why are you hearing the no's? What are their reservations with it? And what do you do to deal with that? Like, what do you say?
I think there's always a lot of concern about the fidelity of the experience. You'll say, well, if we do it in WebXR, will it be compromised? Will it be not as good? And so I often try to deliver a really rapid prototype, showing like a vertical to say that we can. So, for instance, when I had to show them the cockpit, I had to put them into the cockpit with no training materials. I just said, you can just sit in the cockpit. And when they saw the cockpit, they said, okay, this is good enough. This looks like the real thing. And so they are often afraid that technology will not deliver the minimum requirement, because it's a new technology. I'm not, and to be honest, there are lots of newfangled things that come along that promise to solve everything. And so I always try to listen to what their concerns are, rather than saying, I'm selling this.
Always a good business person who does that.
You always have to listen first, and always to be ready to say to approach a problem. And this is a painful thing, to spend like many days talking to them and to be able to say, actually, this is not what you need. Thank you for your time, rather than both of us suffering, you trying to use this thing. So Playco is not a VR company. Playco is a solutions company. VR is just how we solve parts of the problem that need that. So we make mobile apps, we make websites, we make native apps, we do whatever. And so we are never there just to sell VR. We're there to solve a problem. And so it's kind of a luxury have that we can do that.
I love
And
what
if I
you
can,
were saying.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the part that you were discussing about like when you find a budget, and this has been sort of my journey through WebXR, is I landed on the safety use case. Like Loci, we use digital twins of buildings to generate simulation and fly-throughs that are played in mobile games. We're not putting people into XR, but we're using XR as a studio to provide visualizations that we wouldn't, that would cost us so much money to make in real life. But that safety budget I was like, that budget's never going away. Like that budget's never going away. I can sell that budget all day long. And the other one I had a really good time with, which you mentioned, which was the planning, right? Like we had a working demo for a little while. We were planning festivals by saying, hey, like you're spending, when we talk to festival planners, they're using maps that are sometimes 16 feet off. They're using just site visits, so actually sending people there. And about, for a 75,000 person festival that costs about $1.5 million, $2 billion to put on, $350,000 to $400,000 of that are just spent on hotel and accommodation, and not even the labor cost itself, just travel costs for the team that's there setting it up. So I was really like, I think this is where, like, rather than, Liam talking about like these customer cycles and things before, I think the best first question you can ask when you're going in to sell something, especially something like WebXR, which can do so many things, where's the budget? Whose budget is it? Where's the budget? How are we gonna how am I gonna impress this person that's in charge of the budget? And what's the key killer feature that WebXR has that's gonna actually address this budget concern? For me, it was like, I can put you all into an environment. You can save about 3 weeks of planning by just doing it virtually. And that's, it's like 200 grand. So that I can make a business out of that. Right. And so I'm interested to know where these budgets are that we see that align directly, like obviously marketing, right? A simulation thing like that. Saving money on not making somebody download an app is huge amount of savings. It's not to be laughed at, but I'm interested to know where those other budgets are that we think WebXR can really have an impact on. It gives us an opportunity or an opening in.
And just to jump in quickly, we've got another poll going just to hear from you on the barriers of, what's going on in your world. So that link, I think Steve is going to pull up right now, and he's going to share the code with us so if we can get some feedback from you. A few other just housekeeping things, just so you know, we actually have a Hubs and a VR Land World live. So hello to everybody. So if everybody wants to throw their camera on and wave hello to all the people in Hubs and VR Land, it's great that we have all these different worlds that are taking in some of this content. And for myself, I just wanted to add to what you were saying, Samantha. My experience is that through working with business and enterprise, there's three things you need to overcome. First of all, there's the financial, and just as you said, which department and the approval of that department to commit to either a POC or the work that you're going to be doing. There's also the technical procurement and the security procurement, and we've got a lot of questions on security today. We're going to try and get to some, but we do know that's important to everybody, that we have addressed that in our business summit in September. So yeah, over to you, Samantha. Let's read out some of let's see what the barriers are in our community here of what we've got going out there.
Compliance and government, interested about that. Headsets, expensive VR bugs. Lack of convincing use cases. Interesting. Those.
Education is huge. I'm dealing with some clients right now, and one of the things that we started off with at the beginning was reviewing the needs assessment of the client. What do they need? What are we solving? And it comes back to what Yinch was saying as well. And not only what is it solving, but if we solve it, what is that cost savings around solving it? And I'm dealing with like minute, a maintenance procedure. What is that cost savings of that maintenance procedure of not having to call somebody in to do something live? Instead, you're actually giving that power to the user to be able to do that maintenance procedure, because that immersive experience will give them that. And it goes minute, like, it really goes into fine-tuned details. And, dealing with technical, just them understanding how it's going to be integrated into their processes, into their systems, and then security, bypassing all the security measures that they have. And, that kind of leads into the bigger conversation about data collection and best practices, which I know we want to highlight that in our conversation today. But this is really great to see where everybody is. But education is kind of that first piece, is making sure that the person that you're dealing with, first of all, that they're the decision maker, and all the decision makers that are a part of that also understand the technology that's being implemented and how it will affect other systems within their own enterprise or their own business ecosystem. So that's a huge piece. And I even find, weeks after we started the project, there's still either hesitation or just, the unknown and that sort of thing. So some of my lessons coming from my experience is making sure that needs assessment is matched to the statement of work, which also holds very, very, the power to close that contract and to deliver. And what is their expectations of that delivery of what you're what you're building for them? Because as everybody knows, that it's probably built something, additional scope is that is that ugly term that happens in a lot of these projects. And how do you manage that? Managing that comes back to the statement of work, comes back to that needs analysis that the statement of work was built on. So there's a lot of things that you've got to stay on top of. And as they're learning, their ideas are evolving and their understanding is evolving, which makes it even more challenging to meet those expectations. So, check-ins with your client, once every few weeks, or, deliverable milestones. That's another thing that we manage off of, is milestones, because if we can't pass a milestone and meet their deliverables, how do you go on to that next piece? So building your statements of work that have these milestones that the client understands what is being delivered and what is that going to look like at that stage of the milestone. So Samantha, or maybe if anybody else has any feedback on, the process of dealing with their clients and educating them the best ways. It's not just about putting a headset on, it's about all of the other aspects. And, WebXR isn't, about headsets all the time. It can just be remote access.
I don't think that headsets are necessary. I think of headsets just like when we're designing anything, it's just another screen that we have to design for. So if we're, and that's what I love WebXR the most, because I don't want to be in VR all the time. But I want to be able to have a persistent experience in an environment. And I think that what you said, I wrote down, the needs assessment matches the statement of work. This is so huge, especially with something like a new technology, because what I'm sure that many of you have had this experience where you introduce something to somebody, they're like all on board, and then they go home and they research it and they come back and they're like, and you've got to like, then, so when there's something new and exciting, you have to like give yourself the space and time with those customers for the education piece. I think that can't be skipped. I think we want to like, for me, it's like you think someone's understands and they're like just agreeing with you, but then they'll come back with their whole idea of what it is the next day. So really giving people some sort of education, some things to play with, some what it is and some what it's not, some what it's good for, some what it's bad for, right? And then letting people have a little bit of time with that before you go into some sort of set proposal. It really does you, it'll do you a lot of favors, because people need to have that time to, with the discovery or all the new information in their mind, before it sort of settles into what you're talking about, before people can really catch up. You got to let them sleep on it before you pitch it almost. That's been my experience.
Samantha, I am really interested in hearing from the group about what do they think the strengths of WebXR are, because we talked about the challenges first, but I also think we're all here because we're super enthusiastic about the technology. So I would love to hear from the audience. I think we're going to run another poll of that one as well. But I'm curious to hear from people who are in the audience, because that's why you're here, right? So tell us answer the poll that is being put up right now, and then let us know what you're so enthusiastic about and why you're a fan. I mean, that's why we're all here, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It always comes back to managing expectations, right?
Yeah, it's true.
It's like beating it over the head.
Professional life, right?
Yeah. And it's ongoing. Oh yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Who's speaking?
In terms of it's Yinch again. One thing about managing expectations, I had a recent collaboration with a manufacturing networking collective, and I showed him some VR technology which we were going to use on desktop. We weren't going to use it primarily immersively, and one of the things that it highlighted was that producing content for WebXR is not like producing content for a web page. There are certain design challenges. It is much closer to interior design and architecture. And often digital designers from the web side of things will come in thinking, oh, it's a web page. We will attack it with 2D design attacks. But the person I was working with, when he started using Frame VR, he suddenly realized he was actually not running a Zoom meeting. He was setting up an exhibition, and literally was up all night, 2 nights in a row, setting up an exhibition with him and his intern. And so the expectation, not just in terms of what results they might expect, but what it would take to deliver those results, they're also different as well. People say, well, if I tell my designers to go away and like make a CRM for me, I know what it is, they know what it is. But when you say go away and make a WebXR experience, it's new. I don't think the people who have traditionally designed for that sort of spaces are actually video game designers, not web designers. But video game designers, again, don't approach this space because they think it hasn't got enough polys. So there's a huge not huge, but there's a fairly major paradigm shift in how you design for immersive spaces, which means that lots of our existing web designers they just haven't covered that ground. You might have been a web designer for 20 years, but the first time you do a WebXR experiment, it's really like an experiment. You're sort of like floundering. You keep trying to put pages on walls, and it's just kind of pointless. People look at it and say, "Oh, you just put all your web pages onto walls. What good is that to me?" And we really have to try to not make WebXR exist for its own sake. Which is the other thing I wanted to say, which is that nobody wants VR. Okay, I wanted to say that nobody wants VR. People want solutions to problems. So, for instance, when I went to the flight school, I didn't say to them, "Hey, do you want VR?" I said to them, do you want to solve your training problems more cheaply? Do you want to be able to have your trainees have many more training cycles versus waiting for the simulator time? So really, you have to, it's just in the same way that nobody wants to be like on a plane or in a bus or stay away from home. All the pain that people suffer in terms of enterprise and commercial, like the logistics.
And I actually love being on planes. I don't know. I take your point. I think you're absolutely right that it is absolutely about solving a problem. But I guess what I'm curious to hear, because I know what I think WebXR's benefits are. For me, it's the portability. For me, it's the accessibility is a big thing. But I would love to hear, I know, Daniel, I have seen your name in other meetings, so I'd love to call on you if that's okay, not to put you on the spot. Do you have anything to say? What do you think is really great about it, WebXR? Daniel there? Hello? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Join us. I'd love to hear. I've seen you on other calls. I've seen your name. I am really curious what you think WebXR's strongest points are.
Strongest points, I think, are, as discussed already, I think it's about ease of use, easy to share a link, easy to get in, not having to download an application. What else? Talked about before. I haven't thought about that as much, but easy to update as well, especially if you work with clients. I think that must be one of the key advantages. You can easily turn it around with the customer. But from a user point of view, it's really about ease of use and defining the specific use cases that are optimized for WebXR. Maybe not trying to compete with the AAA games as we talked about before as well. So I think that's just on top of my mind.
Cool. Anybody else have anything to add that wasn't already said? Because I think we've covered a lot of it, but I want to hear what other people say. We have a very quiet audience. I'm going to start calling on people, just like in school. You're going to be really, no, don't call me. I am Gabby. I love you. You win for best background, so I'm going to call on you if that's okay.
We also have another poll, which I think Steve's going to pull up so that we can learn some more from our audience. And just to kind of tie off what you were saying there, I think, the other really, the small tidbit of that is making sure the client understands the best application of WebXR. And I've dealt with clients who think they want AR, but that use case is not, it doesn't really work for that particular application. And they might have heard it from other colleagues that, we need to do web AR, we need to do web AR, but what is that best application for it? So again, it comes back to education and understanding the different technologies around, whether it's VR, AR, or MR, and maybe it's just 3D on web. What is that application that makes it valuable to retain information? So here's our next poll. Yep.
Oh, I was just going to say too, like David wrote multi-user audio handled well, and it made me think of things like how we don't have to build it all from scratch in the web. Like one thing I found really promising, and I'd love to see more of is like lobbies around places. Like we were making, for esports, just like pulling in and making a Smash Bros world and then streaming Twitch, but then people can hang out in the area, like having lobbies or having these kind of like places that are, so like for the multi-streamed audio, something like Clubhouse. Like, can we have Clubhouse just inside of a world? Like they have the multi-streamed audio there. So like just how we have this Discord chat around the Zoom, can we create places around features or around things on the web that we like that start to extend this out? And I mean, even like Somnium Space, we're going to be talking with Archer they started making a WebXR library world. And I think that would be I'd love to see more walled gardens or sort of closed platform experiences where, hey, we're going to just make a lobby, right? Like just something to start off with. Like, we don't know what WebXR is for. We don't know how we want to use it, but like, let's start with the environments and let's move on from there. I think when we're kind of in this place in WebXR where it's kind of like before the data layer of the web came in, where you have these static rooms that just sort of sit there and go bad in a lot of ways. And so I think it'd be interesting to see how we can start to bring the data layer in to these WebXR. There's so much open data, like just even being able to visualize all the planes that are in the sky and different things like that. Like, how can we start to use WebXR to visualize data in ways that it hasn't been before, not necessarily put people in there, but just use that space and the automation and the access to all these data flows that are going around on the web and putting it into cool contexts for people. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go into that experience.
That's right. That's right. Just before we move on to data, I know that we had a comment from David. Sorry, I just lost it. I was about audio. Hold on. Sorry, my David Schultens. Maybe if you'd like to just join us on stage for a minute, just to talk about multi-user audio and echo cancellation and latency are, being key for collaboration. We'll just touch quickly on audio. In that, is there anything that you want to share with us, David?
Hi.
There?
Yes.
Hi. Welcome.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak to it directly. It's, the litmus test of collaboration is musicality. I think that vocal communications obviously need to have acoustic echo cancellation to, prevent, feedback loops from happening, and multi-user room experiences, just two Zoom people checking in from the same room is a problem. So,
yeah, we have a lot to learn about audio still, and how these systems start to overlap on each other. That's for sure.
Yeah.
If anybody was here during pre official launch, yes, it's still a challenge.
Yeah, so that is I think the biggest necessity is to get the collaborative experience to be non-threatening, is actually to model environments that sound good and put people into an experience that matches the visual experience, where you have a psychoacoustic impression. And so I think that if that can be achieved by not only just having, vacuous chambers, but having chamber orchestras, or musicality as an invitation for people to explore in their own creativity, it's something to do once you get in there.
I think the key there is the interoperability of how all the systems work. And I'd like to invite Sean Mann to just jump in here. I know you've just maybe if you want to share a little bit about your experience.
Julie, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're definitely new to the WebXR community, so I really appreciate you guys doing something like this. Actually, Ben Irwin was very kind to let me know about it and kind of meet some like-minded people. Our tech founder, actually kind of solved more of a networking server issue that was consuming a massive amount of servers. So when you think about VR, probably less than AR, but the idea is if you want to have this metaverse or interoperability, you're going to want to have a platform that can handle millions of people and they can jump in and out of different applications. And so if we're trying to get people to stop downloading and kind of be very monolithic, we have to think differently. And I love that's where WebXR is going, where you can be more persistent. The question is how do you handle the scale necessary? And so for us, we've solved the networking server layer, and we're actually right now working on connecting it with WebXR. We do have challenges on the graphic side. I think there are some limitations with WebXR. We initially were going to use the Unreal Engine, but it's there's just too much to decouple from their engine because there's so much network server code that's built into their graphic engine. And so WebXR was much, much easier to work with, but you don't necessarily get the graphics that you see with like a Unity or an Unreal Engine. That's where I hope where WebXR continue to expand and get better feature sets. I think that will make it a much better platform. But what we're trying to do is actually bring in the network server architecture where it'll be very inexpensive for people to build applications and allow them to actually be interconnected. And so we have quite a challenge ahead of us, but we're bringing, I think, just the network server layer and figuring out how to work with the other building blocks, if you will. And so that's where we're at right now.
Is that with voice, Sean?
Yeah, it includes voice. So our demo is going to have about 2 million people. Obviously, I don't think we're going to be able to get 2 million real people. So we have a complete bot system that will replicate someone connecting from an external port. And we have a third-party company that's going to validate all of that. But we've kind of solved if you think about it, when you have 5 or 10 people, it's very easy to kind of let everyone else know what's happening in real time. So you lift an arm, everyone knows that you lifted an arm. But when you start having a massive amount of people, how do you send that information to larger amounts of people without consuming CPUs? And so it becomes really, really expensive to scale. We actually have a really large VR company that said if we scaled to 100,000 persistent users, we'd go bankrupt. It would cost us too much because if you think about real-time applications, the biggest issue, let's look at the largest AWS customer. You have like a Fortnite, or you have any real-time application consumes a massive amount of servers. You're looking on average between 100 to 250 people on a single server. And with our architecture, we change on, you no longer have to code the network server layer. That's actually done by our system. And you only focus on the graphics and the experience that you want to do. And now you have the scale. Now, we do have an issue with how many people could be seen on a screen, because I know the WebXR browser itself can only handle so much.
We were
Just
playing around
continue
with
to build out
that exact problem. We were putting people in because we could like basically visualize once people had all joined into a room, and then actually connect them just to one avatar, so they'd sort of like fold in on, so that you're actually the engine's only handling one person moving around, but you'd sort of opt for that person, your room, to be like the room lead. And so then you could see that there's, visualize like say 15 people in a pod, but that pod is actually the only representation there. And also playing around with mirroring other rooms as a visualization and stuff. It's such a cool problem that you're solving, because the multi-user experience and the bandwidth is so challenging.
Yeah,
Sean, I'm sorry, Sean, I can't see because it's too small on my Zoom little box. Who do you work for? Who's your company?
I'm the CEO of a company called RP1, and it's rp1.com is our website. And we're actually at the Metaverse event at GamesBeat with Dean Takahashi. And we also, I just actually did a talk with Game Refinery as well. We're a very new company. We came out in January of this year, but the actual technology has been about a decade in the making. And it's basically...
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. To me, it sounds like one of the benefits of WebXR is agility. Right? I mean, it's good for smaller groups. I mean, you're not trying to boil the ocean, right? You can't be everything to everybody all the time. So 100%. Let the unities of the world do the 10 million people. And then, if you want to put together something for a smaller group, you've got the WebXR can allow you to build it, deploy it, put it up, and access it much faster, right? That's what it sounds like.
Linda, you hit it right in the head. So the idea is we're looking to put the platform there, and you can use any type of gaming engine that you want. So if it doesn't matter if it's WebXR, at some point we do want to work with Unreal and Unity. But I think the neat thing about WebXR is that it's very, very easy to use. It seems like you can get projects up and running much, much faster. Obviously, the tool sets need to continue to get better. I think you've heard that, and I've seen that with the chat. But I think as that continues to expand, it'll make it a lot easier to do different projects. But I agree with you 100%. It's really more giving. We hope that this is going to allow people in the developer community to basically scale without the costs associated with scale. And so we inherently can give away, scale for free and charge a very modest percentage of either profits or whatnot. But we're not focused on the business right now. We're really focused on being a technology company first and figure out a go-to-market strategy after that. And so
I love I think it sounds fantastic, and I can't wait to check out your website, actually. It sounds fantastic. Gabby, I know we kind of asked you a question and then you got up. Would you like to contribute? I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
No, I actually have to meet to leave in 5 minutes, but it's been a very valuable discussion so far. And Sean, by the way, I just contacted you on LinkedIn because you are.
I think we all did.
This is so important what you do, and this is the number one issue we have with clients. We also started. I'm a co-founder of Evenness, and we also started in January, by the way. But I've been working and educating in virtual worlds for decades. And finally, since COVID, sadly, but also finally due to COVID, we are getting somewhere technology-wise and with the adoption. I don't have to add anything at this point because I'm under a little bit of time pressure.
Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure you had your say because I called on you and then you didn't get to say, so I didn't think that was fair. I have a request. We have all these beautiful, wonderful people whose faces I cannot see, and it makes it hard to have a discussion. If anybody is willing to turn on their actual camera, we'd appreciate that because this is a town hall, so we want to see you. There you go. There's some people. And we won't bite much, I promise, truly.
Oh,
there you go.
So cute. Look at all of you. I love it.
I know.
Look at everybody.
Look at everybody. This is much better.
Wind in my sails.
Jonathan Hale, do you have something to add to this conversation? I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'm calling on people, and it is a bit like school, right?
Yeah. So you have a name. Well, I see Tom Strimbu. What's Voxel Revolution? I'm interested to hear from you. That's an interesting name.
All right, I'll go ahead and hop in. I'm quiet because I'm not a developer and I don't have a lot of experience with WebXR. Why I am here today is to try and figure out some of the answers that are being lobbed my direction from clients. That would be kind of pharmaceutical manufacturing or other industries that have a lot of regulation. Is how are we going to move forward from kind of standalone applications into something like WebXR?
Can you explain what you're selling, like what the use case is that your clients, like what are your just a little background?
Yeah, sure. So of course it's diverse. A lot of what we would sell is, I'm just a consultant. So when a client has a need, I try to understand that need and then go out and find the best vendor for the job. But that's going to be things like training. Obviously in pharmaceutical manufacturing, it's a very intense process. A training could take a year for somebody to get fully trained through a system. A failure in that system could be millions of dollars worth of loss, instantly. So in that case, there's really good, strong use cases for training. We've also got tours and I did the gamut of what can be done in AR and VR. Of course, the RealWear headsets or kind of the remote advisor functionality was very popular throughout the last year and a half, obviously, as people haven't been able to come to site. And again, the exact same thing applies, where if there's an outage on site, it's $1 million like that. Whereas we can just remotely get somebody in on a headset and solve that problem. So anyway, again, to reiterate why I'm here is to try and understand as we start making the transition from standalone applications that are hosted on the headsets themselves or on the PC into something that's a more shared environment. What's the impact? How are these heavily regulated environments going to address security? They've got a tremendous amount of processes in terms of checking that information is accurate and timely and signed up. I don't know.
I used to work in digital when social media, yes, I'm dating myself, social media arrived on the scene, and I was working with pharmaceuticals, so I totally understand what you're talking about. It did get solved, and I think this will too, though. And I appreciate the business point of view, that you're bringing to it, because I agree with you on what you said. Hey, Jonathan Hale, I'm calling on you next. I would love to hear your input, please. And I think you were on mute before.
Yes, yeah, I was indeed muted. So I believe very strongly that WebXR can be a lot cheaper, especially since the server infrastructure needed is usually a lot less, right? So you probably have some WebRTC multiplayer going on, which means most of the traffic goes around the server and goes peer-to-peer. Things like that. And generally, I think the development mentality of the web is usually one of super rapid iteration and super rapid deployment. So not only are you building your app really, really quickly, you're getting really fast feedback from the results you are building, but you can also deploy and update in an insanely fast way, which gives you just insane power. I think that a lot of issues people are currently experiencing are due to a kind of framework lag, where a lot of agencies or developers are still working with frameworks that are not necessarily made for the web. And take Unity, for example, we heard before that Unity has some shortcomings on the web currently. You are muted, Linda, by the way. Okay, sorry.
Feedback.
Okay. And yeah, so Unity, for example, might have some shortcomings, and people just assume that because Unity has a web target, they can easily build something with it. But it actually takes great skill. And what Yinch was saying before, them building this flight simulator in Unity, right? That was done with a lot of expertise in optimizing in Unity. Playco just knows a lot about this stuff. And but it's definitely not necessarily the framework to go, right? There's other established frameworks like 3JS, Babylon.js, A-Frame, Play Canvas, all of these. I personally build Wonderland Engine which is a framework dedicated to WebXR and built from the ground up on WebAssembly and WebGL2 for exactly that purpose, which can do this job a lot better, right? And maybe fix the problems that people have with conventional frameworks, like performance, for example.
Thank you. Benita, I see you have your hand up. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha. No, I just wanted to chime in. This is my first sort of participation in this town hall. I think Karen Alexander and I have been talking about this. I'm an educator. I'm a professor at the business school at the University of Pittsburgh, and I've sort of, been one of the first sort of efforts to incorporate AR, VR into business school education. So I think this community can really do a lot to help foster an environment for learning and education among our students. So if there's a way for some members of the community to create a platform that students can interact with and learn about WebXR while they're developing things or contributing to a project, I would be very excited to see that as a potential development in the near future. I think the issue has always been, how do we get the hands-on exposure to our students. And I think the AR/VR course I taught last year, we had a private company sponsor a project, and so students got that hands-on experience. But if there's a way for you to create a platform that is easy to interact with, I think that would be a fantastic use. I would be certainly interested.
I think education through WebXR is one of the most exciting use cases. One of the earlier things we did was, I can't share my screen, but it was a virtual film school. So being able to hop in and actually see how a lens looks in a room, because you see somebody set up a shot, you have no idea what the set looks like, and actually getting somebody into a set. So this sort of scanned environment and putting people in there to see how the different frames or lenses act in frame was awesome. I think there's some really specific hands-on use cases for that. And to your point, it makes me think that we almost need, like, I don't know if there's a business out there that's doing this, but just like a school in a box for WebXR. Because, and this is sort of, we're with Janus, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Janus Web or Janus VR. It's a completely open source. It was the web browser I was talking about before. It's completely open source now, and it has tons of documentation. So all of these components actually exist. Like, there's a whiteboard, and there's like a drawing in the air tool, and all these things like that. But it would be great to start to see these libraries sort of coalesce into verticals, because we know we have all these tools. So it would be great, maybe in the chat, people can share what are the best WebXR education tools that you've seen. Are there some code bases that are open that other people could throw together? So if a consultant's putting together a school or a training program, because I do think that the tools around education, it's not that there needs to be a set platform, it's that the people who want platforms or want to create classrooms need to be able to just throw those tools together into a toolbox and put it out specifically branded to that experience.
I think there's definitely potential there. So thank you. And, if there's anyone who wants to reach out and ask, more specifically about my experience teaching AR, VR in a business school setting, I'd be happy to engage. So,
well, I'd love to hear why. I would love to know just a little bit more about that before I let you go. So, what are you teaching VR and AR as business use cases, or through can you tell us a little bit more about how you started?
Yeah. So certainly, I work at the University of Pittsburgh. So last year, as you know, was a COVID year, and a lot of students were engaging from home. And so the question that the university had was, how do we enhance student engagement through augmented virtual reality tools? And so we had a private company, Imagine AR, come in and provide the platform. And the students took the University of Pittsburgh material, like videos and campus tours, and envisioned a future that was XR enabled. for students. So how do you enhance the student experience through XR was the kind of the project. But where I think there's an opportunity is for that platform, right? How do we create an open platform for students to participate and learn the tools while they're helping create a project or solve a real problem that some business is faced with? I think that's kind of where I see an opportunity.
Anika, do you have any examples from your student classes? That'd be really cool to check out. I know I've been working with Jackie Moore in her classes. She has her students show their end of year projects, and it's been really fun. And people are amazing at what they come up with.
Yeah,
these are students. It's amazing.
Marketing attend the final presentations, and they were blown away at the ideas. There's just so much one can do. Especially it was a COVID year, so the students understood what it meant to be remote and try to engage with, a university, which, so how do you, for example, reimagine a campus tour using XR tools? How do you reimagine an experience at a football game using these tools? And so there's a lot one can do. I'm happy to chat more offline if you need some more, we can have some more conversations around this. Definitely.
Thank you so much. I love that. Hey, Lisa, you just joined us. Lisa Wertzinger. I'm calling on people. It's like school. I just wanted to say hi and welcome and see if you have something you wanted to add to the group, or tell us why you're here, why you like WebXR, and what you're looking to get out of the summit.
Oh, hi everybody. Well, good to be here. I think it's great what Julie and Karen and Ben and everybody's doing here. And well, I think WebXR is one of the most accessible XR tools out there. And what we're doing is we're creating XR events and using different kind of technologies there. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold still. And yeah, I think it's an amazing tool to, I think we've mostly focused on social XR experience and immersive storytelling. And yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here as well.
Awesome. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Everybody who's here, by the way, thank you for your enthusiasm. We are very early, as a couple of people have pointed out on the chat. We're all very, very early adopters. So I think it's up to all of us to try to untangle the puzzle of how do we make it more mainstream. And that's what we're trying to do with these series of summits and all that kind of things that we're doing, is bring it more to the mainstream.
I like that what Daniel wrote in the chat here. Maybe you want to speak a little bit more about it, Daniel, but the use case of easy transition back and forth between 2D and 3D. We were doing a thing, got pitched all the way to the top of Mattel on when they came out with their new viewfinder, was this concept of like, hey, like kids are playing in these online environments, or kids are playing with their toy. And then what's the thing that like maybe they want to go in and experience something with their toy. So putting the web server inside the toy itself for privacy reasons, but then having it be so that your viewfinder became a way just to sort of put it up to your head to see something, not that you're in the experience the whole time. So I really like this, and this is something that's unique to WebXR completely, which is that most experiences that are delivered in VR, you can't just take the headset off and still be in that experience on a flat screen. So this transition from 2D to 3D, in and out, from a perspective of somebody building something or collaborating with something, it's like, you've got all your screens and stuff in front of you, and then you put your headset on to look. So I'd love to hear more from you, Daniel, on what you sort of think about that use case.
I'm just thinking, as long as the browser supports it, I think, and then you can easily connect your headset to your PC. This must be one of the big use cases to explore more. I'm thinking like Zillow. You want to read about the description of the property, obviously on 2D, but you want to explore the Matterport 3D environment in VR, right? So jumping back and forth and building those kind of websites that are optimized both for 2D and 3D combined must be. That was just one example, but there must be huge number of examples where you can actually explore that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, yeah. So that's just one of the things I've thought about. And today, maybe it's not as easy as it could be. I would like to hear more about if anyone is working on something like that already.
Elijah, I'd love to call on Elijah and hear what he has to say.
Sure. I mean, maybe not relevant to the previous comment or previous conversation, but
free-flowing conversation.
Sure. I started a company called Zesty Market, which kind of came out of something called Wonderleap. You might have heard of it. It's like a monetization tool for WebXR developers who are building indie games that are featured on the Oculus browser.
I think everybody's ears just perked up when you said monetary.
Sure. Yeah. I think a huge problem, or like a large bottleneck that's been stopping WebXR developers from entering the space and like building new apps, is just the lack of a market, or especially around monetization, because most WebXR games are free, and kind of the model for games and kind of the Unity space and mobile is they're largely funded by ads, if they are free. And so we've been working on an ad network for the VR kind of WebXR space. And I know we've been working with Jonathan and kind of the platform that he's been building with Concert Arcade, which has integrated our ads, and they've made a couple $1,000s. The market is still pretty small, but recently we've pivoted a little bit into kind of NFTs and kind of the digital scarcity that they provide around attention. Happy to chat more about that.
Bring up the NFT thing when you were talking. Yes, I understand. It's probably outside the remit of the WebXR talk right now, but I understand. I was like, that's the obvious, bridge that now has been crossed.
There was a cool thing you said though about the advertisement side, because I mean, I think we all cringe from the XR space and like when we think about monetizing through ads, but in WebXR, I think it's like the best place to actually start having these immersive ads, because you have Hulu, you have all these networks like YouTube and stuff where people aren't paying for premium and they have interrupted ads, and you don't want to lose them, right? Or they close it out or whatever. So it's like, how can we actually make that ad an experience? Whereas like where it makes sense because people are already in the web. Like if you're in Hulu, like I've had a couple of Hulu ads back in the day that are like, oh, here's an M&M thing, interact with the ad and it'll be shorter. If you don't interact with it, we're just going to play the whole thing. And so this is such a cool opportunity that I'm surprised I haven't seen more WebXR people kind of jumping at or pitching at, which is these captive audiences that are already watching 2D content that you don't want to lose, but you have to serve an ad to. Like, let's make WebXR ads, because then you actually are putting somebody into an environment. Maybe it's just like, hey, you go look at the car. Maybe you're just looking at a 3JS environment. It's not even like, and you're just seeing the cars spin around. But just because you went in just that little step into the 3D world, that counts as interaction. And now you can go back in and out. So sort of back to what we were talking about before with the in and out. I do really I'd love to hear more about the ads and the experiences that you're creating there, because I tend to hate the ad landscape as it exists now with like all of our data and things like that. But from an experiencing point of view, I actually think it's really cool. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. Kind of to begin, I think maybe it's important to preface, like we don't have a ton of developer resources to be able to build out like super sophisticated advertising. I think one thing about immersive ads that you get is the interactivity. If there was a car, you're able to see it in kind of real time change, and that's what Unity is working on, right? So I think there's a lot of work to be done there, but I think we're starting out with just banner ads. So, locations within 3D immersive environments where, for example, you're inside a coffee shop, and you're making coffees for people, like, in your crunch for time. There's very natural spaces on walls and kind of 3D environments where you can place these banners. And the great thing about WebXR is that because it's all in the browser, the experience of changing locations or navigating to a different page is not as jarring as being exited from like a standard Unity game or an app. And so we've been exploring that, and I think there is a fine balance in terms of data and privacy around making sure that the advertiser or whoever the sponsor is of that space receives the correct analytics and receives sufficient analytics for them to come back and keep buying more ads and see the impact of their campaign, but also protecting the user and kind of whoever might be inside the headset, and making sure that we don't collect anything that might be violating GDPR regulations. And so I think there's a lot more work to be done there just around data collection within WebXR, and I'm very interested in what other people have to say.
I'm so glad
And
you brought that up.
from both perspectives too, right? Like from the consumer, what they're collecting, and as a user going into that experience, what is our knowledge base of, what are you collecting off of me? And there's a lot of people that'll just hit next, or okay, and then they're done. But that education of that user going into that experience, understanding the data collection that's going to happen while they're in that experience is really important. How do we make sure that user knows what they're about to be analyzed on, right?
Elijah, it also seems like if you could collect data, because you actually wearing an Oculus, you can see where someone's looking at. You can actually see that they're looking at a banner ad and for how long, because you can actually track their viewpoint. So I think it'd be really interesting if you can build an algorithm that can actually enhance that data. And I think you don't necessarily need to give up the user, but just the idea of it being a male, a female, or any gender or any type of things, or what they're looking at and how long they actually look at that ad could be very powerful from an ad standpoint.
Yeah, and
for monetization of it, yeah.
Yeah, there are ways, I think, that more creative ways we can do some more like real-time optimization of the ad. If you can actually be changing around the location in which they have to click based on their gaze. I think making sure that all that data stays on client and it's happening in a privacy preserving way is super important. And yeah, those are some
and this
really
kind of leads
challenges
to that conversation of standardization. And I just wanted to put a perspective of WebXR in there, is that it's not just about what you're looking at in a VR headset now, it's about hover states. Like if I'm hovering my cursor over a particular thing in even a 3D experience, because that's what my metaverse engine is able to do. We can collect data on hover, where you're hovering and what answers you're answering and what you're clicking through and how long you stay on. What is that duration? So what are the standards out there that we should follow? And this is great conversation. So, and ethics, obviously, ethics around that standardization that, everybody needs to follow. And if we can all be on the same pages, that would be amazing. But what are those standards of ethics out there that we're going to start collecting this data on, especially through marketing experiences where, you don't have that control of an employee or understand, a login from an employee for a training experience is different than a marketing one, because you just don't know who's going to be on there. So what are those standards? So
yeah, or rehab, rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation, what they collect, and whether your insurance company can find out about that later on, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Pierre, you have not spoken yet. I would love to hear from you.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, that's super interesting conversation. Thank you for organizing this. Yeah, I'm coming from a slightly different angle to this, not being a coder, but an architect. And so we actually, a couple of architects and 3D artists dedicate to build meaningful and functional virtual worlds and immersive experience, but really from the architect, spatial designer.
I love that.
And so, yeah, so we've been obviously, so as you say, it's all about exploring and experimenting. So we've been running a monthly event since January and iterating on our design and our building. I mean, you can see in the background, that's one of our gallery there. And so we're collaborating with artists and 3D sculpture and NFTs artists to create exhibition around their art. And I actually invite you to join us tonight because we have an event in a couple of hours starting. I think some of you are already signed up. I can share the link.
Put the link in the chat, Pierre. I'd love to do that.
I will.
That sounds fantastic.
But yeah, so for me, it's really, and I think it's always I really liked earlier when I think Samantha mentioned, yeah, we should start with the environment. I think there is definitely we're not talking enough about the space, because we all WebXR, it's all in the space, but who's designing those space? I don't know. So I'm also trying to gather people that are happy to learn about or to build space. So I have a Discord community as well, and trying to to bring together people that are keen to talk about architecture and what we can apply from the architect language and the history into the WebXR, or what doesn't work, and so that's for me where my conversation is.
Put them, please, put the link in the chat. Love to come. Yeah.
Well, sounds good.
I find that really fascinating because one of the things that we do at our company, Loci, is we convert PDFs and maps like floor plans into digital components that can sort of power the game engine. And it's really important to start with the basics. One of the things that sort of drives us is actually organizing a building by zones, like safety zones or fire zones, which are how all buildings are split up. Yet when we get into inside, like Google scanning buildings and things like that, we go to all of a sudden, we go from resolving to a map tile to an address to going to an entire 3D scan of a place. And we haven't really thought I don't think there's been a lot of thoughtful work put into how you create a database of an environment and split it up into a digital environment. So I think that that's super cool and interesting, and I'd love to chat with you more. I do want to bring us back to an interesting thing that we were just sort of touching on, which is the ethics side and the data collection side. I'm putting a thing here in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with this. It's Lightbeam. It's a great visualizer of cookies. We had made something a few years ago that was really fun, where you could actually add a Zuckerberg head to a Facebook cookie and have like Mr. Smith kind of face for the Google trackers, and really visualize what these cookies look like following you around into a 3D environment. Because this is the cool thing about the web. We can visualize any of these pieces of code that might have normally been sort of running in the background before. So just starting with a playful concept here, which is like, what if you could visualize your cookies before you came into an environment? Or, it's like somebody not taking their shoes off before they step into your cool clubhouse, like, hey, clear your cache, bro. Like, you're not bringing that shit in here. And so I'm wondering, like, what are the ways that we can, because I think to get people passionate about owning their data and understanding the world that we live in, we have to, this is kind of one of the most playful, fun things about WebXR is you can show people, right? Like you can visualize that. You don't have to hide that. Where things are coming from and who's responsible for them. And so I'd love to chat a little bit more about where do you think there's like the obvious concerns of like trackers on the web and not having a ton of control over those in people's browsers, and then creating an environment where people are bringing those things in. And how do you sort of balance that? Where you're getting data and you're using data to make it interesting, to make it functional, but you're also empowering people and moving towards this future where maybe the avatars and people can manage their own identity. Maybe it's like a self-sovereign identity thing. Maybe it's a like carrying around credentials thing. But I'd love to sort of open up the floor here. How can WebXR help and hinder in the data ethics conversation here?
Yeah, we also have a poll. Steve just posted it, just understanding what everybody else thinks the impact of standards of the future of WebXR will be. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll share what everybody's input is.
I just want to say one thing about the ethics, because the WebXR enters the web arena with all these bear traps already out there. There is a reaction. People are saying it's the web again, but I think there is an opportunity for WebXR to deliver like the next web, like Web 3.0, and for our ethics to be built in by design. So if we are if you have to build the internet again today, I think we would design the foundation of data security and data dignity differently than we have now. We're fighting a rearguard action on how we've let data data privacy like run loose for a little while. So one of the things I'm really hopeful for, and I don't know that anybody's doing this formally, is that it is not that there shouldn't be tracking data about you, but you should have control about where it goes. So people, because I think people polarize between the idea that there should be no tracking and there should be complete tracking, but somewhere in between is that there should be tracking to help things work for you. But anybody who wants to access information, you basically have to give. And in a way, that doesn't mean there's 100 things to say okay to for every website you go to. That's just, that's.
Well, you're talking about VRM, Jens, aren't you really? And you're talking about, and I think Brave browser is as close to that as it currently exists. You own the data you have there, and you can choose to monetize that if you want with the BAT token. Right. I don't know how that's going to affect WebXR though. Why don't we talk about that? I mean, I think that's an interesting point. If we do manage to turn the monetization model on its head, where they're collecting data, but they don't have rights to it, which I'm not sure will ever actually happen, because I think we may have gone too far already. But in theory, that is something that can happen. Does anybody have experience with any of that stuff, or any thoughts? Or is it a really boring subject? That is possible.
No, when I was working in with Janice and with the web, 2015 to 2017, it kind of all the time, we're just always this anonymous one. In Janice, we're always just an anonymous avatar that just shows up with a randomly generated name. And in my early days, I'm like, well, why can't I, change that and stuff? Well, it's like, well, who's going to be the owner of that identity? Is it your email that you're going to use to sign in? This idea of accounts and identity, working in WebXR early on is what pushed me into working into self-sovereign identity and to working into the identity landscape, because being in WebXR is where I learned that I actually don't own anything, and that none of these sort of accounts or representations of who I am as a person or as an avatar are held by someone else. And this is, I think, where we say the environments are really important, but I think the avatar is extremely important, or the concept of an avatar, even without a WebXR environment. This idea of a digital twin of you, or of an agent of you that can exercise your own settings that you've set up. So you're not in there because right now, every website you go to, it's like, here's a banner ad. Are you going to accept our cookies? Because you can't see anything unless you accept our cookies. And it's like, that sucks, right? But I think that there's an opportunity to move towards a sort of a credential or a self-identity system that isn't just about paying people for their data, but it's about personal management. I won't ramble, but I made a version of myself, a bot called Blondtron, that I took everything I wrote in my 20s and I made a shitty chat bot. And I went in and I experienced myself. And normally, you look back at things you did in your 20s on Facebook and you're just like, yikes. But because it was in a body, because this data of me, of my past, my experience of myself was in an actual format of a body, and I went in and experienced it in a spatial way, something else completely happened. Like, all the self-loathing that I had kind of lessened to quite a lot, because I was all of a sudden dealing with this compassion that's built into us when we're in the presence of another body. And I think that there's something really interesting there about us understanding and caring about our own data that happens when we start to see the embodiment of that data. And I think that's kind of what's missing, is the UI, UX, the user experience of ourselves, of our data, that isn't there yet, so people don't care about it yet. So I see WebXR as this cool visualization tool, both of self, but of things that are happening on the web.
I can chime in with just a different look at it. I think we're at the forefront of interoperability. And if you think about it, there's two major plays. You think of competition, and you think of, Facebook has no competition. So it allows them to do what they want with the data, because you don't have other options. And I think as you develop more applications that are interoperable, the competition is going to give you different options to the consumers, and it's going to allow them to have choices. And it's not about forcing the consumer in one direction or creating a standard that forces something. I think when you have choices, I think the supply and demand is going to take care of what people want. And I think if there were 10 Facebooks, I think you would compete and say, well, we're not going to take your data. A lot of people would gravitate gravitate towards a different choice. And I think as you think of interoperability, I think you're, Samantha, I think you're exactly right. I think there are going to be lots of identity companies that are going to allow you to create an entity that allows you to be private, but yet you're still, there's data on you that allows you to choose what you want to give to a developer. And I think we're just at the beginning of those choices to start happening. And I think those are going to allow a lot of companies to start thinking about how do we protect the identity of the individual, but you also want to give the tool sets necessarily to developers to allow them to build these really great environments that people are willing to give that information to allow them with a better experience. And so I think that's just going to take time to develop. But I think this interoperability is allowing us to start thinking about things that we never had choices before. And I think those choices are really going to create really amazing experiences and apps along this kind of metaverse, if you will. And I think that's going to allow us to have way more choices, which I think will be better for all people involved in this experience.
Agreed. I think, Sean, I know that, I mean, these discussions, not just about the 3D space, have been happening before the 3D space was even around, right, in terms of the early web and all those kinds of stuff and who owns the data, and it never managed to turn itself on its head. But immersive is by nature so much more personal, you know, because you're there, that hopefully these discussions will be fueled a bit more. I think the I cannot say that word, interoperability. I have such problems with that one. Thank you. Just don't make me say it again. Interoperability is a good subject for us to maybe riff on a bit. I'd love to ask Nitin if he has something to say about that, because he has been in the chat, but I haven't seen you talk much here. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about interoperability. I said it again, if anything.
I'm actually sorry, I didn't quite much know about interoperability thing. So would it be okay to share something from my perspective? Like, I just want to put some points about how we can impactfully scale VR in our community. Especially, I'm coming from India as a background, and I actually don't own any I don't own any Quest or any headsets with higher basically I don't own any expensive VR headsets. But even though I didn't stop from developing apps for virtual reality, the VR is made possible to people's with lower budgets through a tool called Cardboard. We have a lot of developers are undermining the power of the Cardboard here, and I hope everybody understands what I say. Sorry with my slang and everything. The power of the Google Cardboard. Okay, so we can run VR apps or any experience within a with our phone. Okay, so if we're able to manage quite a bit of experience with the Cardboard, then I think we can scale up the entire thing to a whole bigger kind of audience. Okay. So yeah, I think it should be developing more on a Cardboard environment. Optimizing the developments for the Cardboard environment can scale up the whole business of WebXR team. This is a point I just wanted to add. I'm sorry, I'm nervous because I'm talking.
Can you bring lots of people from India to our summit? Because I would love to have their input on how it can be localized and what's happening there. Promise to invite lots of people to come visit the summit on September 14th from India, because I think that we need that.
And it's we talked about it earlier. It's an incredible point where it's like, let's think about all of these nations where, it's mobile first. And something as cheap as a Cardboard's headset, which is $1, and really what that affords us. Because I think we get a little caught up in all the technology and how fancy and all these things can be, but really the beauty of the web is someone can have a phone and a piece of Cardboard and have an immersive experience. That's incredible.
Agreed.
Sure. And most of the people from my country can't afford any headsets like Quest or something. People haven't heard of it quite yet here in India. And amazingly, India consists of some of the largest population, and lots of people in the world is concentrated on India. So to expand the VR to more peoples, it should be great if we implement all the VR aspects to the Cardboard if we develop more on that aspect, because it should be more helpful for more common people like us.
I love this thing that that Nick just posted. I'm not sure if you've seen it in the chat here, but this I'm just going to share. This is really cool. This is a great example of like, I mean, this looks awesome.
Yeah.
And it's obviously like, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So I built this thing to I am actually graduated from engineering. So I just had to meet up with my friends. And I also had to learn lots of stuff for my semester examinations. So that's the reason why I created this thing. Actually, we can do all kind of mathematical stuff. We can just ask them what is 10 plus 10, and the AI will tell us. And we can do the both thing. Like we can do study offline, and if you want to collaborate, then we can host, and then we can communicate with our peers also. So,
well, here's the education platform we were all talking that needed to exist.
Yeah.
So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's truly excellent. And it's great to hear your perspective because again, you know, India and all these developing nations that have just phones, like this is where WebXR is so cool. I'd love to hear, we haven't heard from, where is he? Jonathan, let me see. Where did you go?
Hey, this is
Yes.
I have a small point to add to the previous one. Based on India's market, actually, the Quest there is actually double the price. I think it's something to do with how import taxes work. I'm not sure. So it actually costs in Indian currency, it'll cost $600. So I haven't seen a lot of people with the Quest in India. But yeah, as you said, WebXR makes it more possible because India is one of the biggest countries with the smartphone user base. So there's a huge untapped market there.
Completely agree. Nicholas, Nicholas Likitra, I was like looking at you. We haven't heard from you yet. Do you have any opinions about this, the ethics, the growth, anything?
Sure, yeah. I'd like to talk about the interoperability. So I'm from PBS, and we, as you know, have a lot of member stations, and they're all producing their own content. And one thing that we would love to do is kind of have like a hub, like a lobby that you mentioned, to showcase the different disparate projects and worlds that are being created. But of course, there is the navigation problem. You know, it's like, how do you know that you're actually navigating to a safe URL? And I know that Oculus has enabled that under like a subdomain. And so PBS actually benefits from that because we can just throw all of our projects into the pbs.org subdomain. But that's also like a big challenge for like, how do we get other smaller developers to, be able to easily navigate in between these experiences that might exist on a separate domain. And I think that's going to be a big challenge for the industry because it's a very big paradigm shift. When you're in an immersive session, you no longer have the browser telling you what's safe and what's not. And that it's a really interesting problem, but it's also a big problem, I think. And so I'm looking forward to trying to help solve that with the community, but that's just something that's been on my mind as I've been, facing some of the challenges that we have at PBS.
So the security itself of the like hyperlinking, or just like in the environment?
Yeah, so like ideally, if you wanted to just have like a Google, but an immersive Google, you wouldn't really be able to have that unless everything is under the same subdomain. And I think that, that's one of the strengths of the web, is being able to bounce around to different experiences, seeing, what people have created, and that, is a big risk, but, I think it's something we can rise to the challenge of at some point.
Totally. We were playing around with IPFS libraries. So like how you can have persistent objects between worlds. And I I think that's like, I think why everybody got so excited about NFTs and all of those things. It's just like, how can something persist between these places? I mean, I think if we could have rebuilt the web with IPFS, we'd have a really thriving WebXR ecosystem. We'd be able to do a lot of those issues really come from the server scaling and the persistence of objects and environments. So it's a cool thing to try and figure out and solve, both from the perspective of somebody moving between those environments and there maybe being somebody being able to spoof or whatnot, but also being able to take something with you, like an inventory or an object, or to break a twig in a world and have it stay that way. I think this is all like a really interesting thing for interoperability. We had, I think the coolest interoperability thing I saw was by James Biacano. James Bai, he did the Medicaid, and it was a way for you to hop between like A-Frame and Janus VR and all these different worlds. But I'm interested, has anyone else sort of had experiences with interoperability and sort of challenges or things there?
Maybe just to add on to what you said, Nicholas, around providing smaller developers who might not have direct communications with the Oculus browser team some way to be able to kind of, as a community, organize which domains are trusted and which ones are not. That's something that like I think would be able to open up a lot more possibilities, because the Oculus browser team is also, limited by their resources, right? They can't be fielding every single, country and person's request to be added to this trusted, community list. So, I mean, that's something that I'm wondering, like, if anyone has thought more about whether it's through, because I know the Oculus browser is not open source, although they are a fork of the Chromium browser. So perhaps this is something that like the WebXR community could invest some time and money into, like developing, like if there was an open source option. Just some thinking there. I don't know, Nicholas, have you thought about like a community curated list or yeah?
That would be great. Yeah. I think so. Like one clarification, like Oculus hasn't necessarily kept a list, or like if there is a list, we're not a part of it. It was more just there's a flag, you could have multiple subdomains. But I love the idea of like a community driven list that's trusted. I think one of the big challenges is like, how do you build trust in that list? And how do you scale that? But I think, like I'm a developer, so I come from like the open source community. And I think that is a great example of a lot of different people coming together and building something that people generally trust over time. And so I think we can learn a lot of good lessons from that, not just on the development side, but on the reputation of whatever product or service or brand that you're offering, even if it's a collection of products or services and brands.
I love what you're saying here. Could we talk a little bit more about that? This idea of like a safe list or a white list, kind of like an SSL sort of style certificate for worlds that then someone like Oculus that has all these headsets out there could be, create an experience like, hey, do you want to go surf the web? But it's like the safe version of the web, right? Like there's this white list of experiences. Rather than put an app in through the Oculus store, you could say, hey, I hit these things on my website. It's an experience. It won't link to these other places or whatever like that. And then have it be approved almost like it would for an app store, but as a site so people can start exploring.
That's a really interesting, angle to take on it, because we do have these things like certificate authorities that, we've, as a collection of people have said, okay, we trust you to vouch for these resources that we're accessing. I can see a lot of parallels where perhaps we don't need to, we allow domain, go to a different site as long as it's got the right certificate for.
Yeah, just like an SSL server for a 3D environment. I wonder if there's a way that we could adapt or create markers or things, or some sort of automated way to assess a site, like a crawler, that then like you say you get the cert, but then the crawler goes through it, and the crawler is regularly assessing it to sort of make sure that it hits these things on the cert, and so that it could, you could continue. Because what I'd love to see is like, you see these closed worlds where people can create and they keep expanding out, but we need this for WebXR. And I think that the only way that we'll get there isn't through a standardization of necessarily the tools, but in what's acceptable and safe. And if we can kind of come up with a tool set or a framework where we can all agree on the basics of what's acceptable and safe, and it's not too limiting, and it's not like, oh, you have to use this kind of avatar, you have to use this kind of things, or, it's more just like, don't be a fucking creep, then that allows us to sort of expand out from a WebXR community standpoint, but that's still actually the open web.
I just like to say that.
Is anyone in the WebXR working group, or I'd be interested to know who's in these places. And we have one more poll, and we're nearing our time. So
yeah, we're just we've got about 9 minutes left on this very, very valuable discussion that we've got going on. But we do have another poll about what key features of WebXR do you believe have the most commercial promise? And we'd love to hear from you. And so that was kind of taken from some of the stuff you were talking about, Samantha. But I think Mahesh has something that he wanted to share. Really, he posted. He said he had to go, so I don't think he's still here. But maybe we can. Let's see. Based in India, we come from the industrial XR space. However, they're now building 3D animated interactive content for learning and science for grades 8 to 12 in India, gamified experience concepts, etc. One of the driving factors is the cost of the devices that we see WebXR as a way to reach low resource settings. And we're looking for help in implementing this into WebXR. So if anybody would like to assist him in this, he's dropped his contact information there for you to take a look at.
Fantastic. Okay, educational, utilitarian.
There we go. We've got some votes coming in now.
Hi guys, I'm still here. If you have me, have a minute.
Sure, go ahead, Mahesh. Yeah, we see the challenges as far as integrating some of your platforms into WebXR, and maybe if anybody can assist with Mahesh, maybe contacting you directly is the best way.
Yeah, that's the best way. Yes, that'll be great. Considering time shortage now. Yeah, but just to give you an overview, so what we're trying to do is focus on a higher grade course material. So that would be in the sciences because they're easy to animate, hard surfaces and so on. So we've now managed to bring it down to a low poly count and make it run quite smoothly, but still having trouble with bringing in interactivity in a web setting. So hopefully I'd get some help from the folks here.
Sure. Sorry, go ahead.
So on the subject of the whitelist, I think that it's really interesting about what is safe, and we talked about SSL certificates. But one of the things that I think we have potential to do right this time is to make the whitelist be more granular than it is at the moment. Because SSL it's a two-state thing. Either you have a certificate or you don't. You're in or you're out. And I think one of the powers of how places like spaces like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook came to be was they are partitioned into like special interest groups. And I think WebXR shouldn't try to police the content for everyone, for everything. It should give the tools for communities to wall themselves up to the level that they need to. And the model that is close to this is actually Discord. I think Discord is an excellent example of how it is open and as closed as you want it to be. So if you can make WebXR a bit like Discord, then I'd be really happy. So,
fantastic.
Actually, I have seen spaces like that pop up, like how Samantha you said about lobby spaces. I have seen people who do live events, but they'll have a space like a lobby, which is a lot like Discord, but it all is like you're in a space and you can chat, and there's also a chat. And yeah, it's that, I think all that social stuff is mixing up and coming to some kind of threshold.
Hey everybody, we have 40 people registered for this, which is great right now. We were looking to have as many people as possible take the poll and find out what your answers are to this one. The link is in the chat. and we'd love to be able to see it. It's what key features of WebXR do you believe will have the most commercial promise? I don't know. I'm having trouble deciding this one myself.
I'm all utilitarian. I've seen all the cool social stuff, and like co-working is really cool.
I'm thinking commercial. Yeah, that's the thing. Like they all have promise, but like what's going to make the most money? I think. Yeah, I know what I think. I'm going to see what you guys think.
I'm keen to. Anybody have any?
It should really be all of them. It should be all of them.
I know, right, Julie? It's like I can't think of commercial. I'm like commercial. Where are brands? For me, that means where's brands going to get involved? You know, because they have the money.
It's really in social. A lot of social. It's where we'll see a lot of impact of marketing.
Linda, I'm interested to hear, or Lisa, sorry, I'm interested to hear what's Go Inside VR. We haven't heard from you yet there, so are you here? Oh, I see you. Lisa. Hi.
Okay. Well, we are coming from a traditional filmmaking background, actually, and our VR 360 film, the first one back in 2016, was presented at like 11 film festivals worldwide. We are involved in European R&D projects about immersive storytelling and assistive media. We created social XR events last year for cultural forums in New York and together also with Room. And yeah, we're basically digging into this WebXR thing and wanted to use it for immersive and transmedia storytelling and yeah, actually world-building and creating like immersive experiences for users that are not just 2D in a 3D world. And
I can share it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's great. And what do you think? So for you, it's like the storytelling sort of immersive side that is the most promising vertical you see for WebXR?
I think the social XR aspect of it is kind of promising. Of course, also like marketing and immersive ads, for example. You can also include that into all these experiences. And yeah, we're more on the artistic side, art and music, social XR events, but also kind of corporate events as well.
Thank you. Well, we only have a couple minutes left here, so I just want to, if there's any sort of closing remarks anyone has, put them in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up, if you've really got something pressing to say. I do want to again thank FutureWay, our sponsor, and all of the team here for putting this together. It's pretty cool to see this community growing, and we have an amazing event on September 14th. So this was really about getting us into the headspace, understanding what the community's thinking is now, so how we can really make sure that this programming that we've put together touches on all the things that you guys care about. And so if you haven't registered yet, please go register. We'll put the link in the chat again. It's up here on the screen. And it's going to be an incredible event. We got everybody we wanted to talk to. Everyone's confirmed. We've got we've got a great fireside chat with Albin from Sketchfab, which just got bought by Epic, and lots more incredible programming. Because it's funny. A lot of people laugh. They're like, "You're finding people for the WebXR Business Summit? Like, good luck." But I think we've proven them all wrong. I think there's a really strong community here. We're small, but we're vibrant and we're growing. And so please come to the summit, invite your friends, anybody who's interested in this side of things. You don't have to be technical. This is the business use case side. We're not getting into all the developer tools. We're really talking about how we make this real for everyone. So register, invite your friends, and thank you so much to Julie and Karen for co-hosting this with me, and for everybody who participated. Any closing remarks? I'm going to open the floor, but I'm ecstatic.
Yeah, and Samantha, let's not forget about our design summit in October too. So just to give you a bit of background on how we tried to curate this is because, and it's great that we have so many business people and design people here today just to see the different perspectives of business itself. But we've actually curated 2 summits coming up. So September 14th is the first one. That's our business summit. And then October 12th is our design summit. So those ones will be two very different. Kent Bai will be joining us on the design summit to help us host. And what you're seeing on your screen here is basically the run of show for the business summit on September 14th, and some of the amazing guests that we have that Samantha and myself, I'll be co-hosting, but Samantha will be taking the lead with some of these conversations, and we've got great moderators, people from the community who are all working from different perspectives of WebXR. So looking forward to inviting everybody, and both of the links are available for registration. So to register yourself, share with your teams that you're working with, get them on board and learning. This is the time to learn, and as everybody knows, every day is a learning journey. And we're happy and excited our team is able to put all of this together for you guys and offer this source of education that is so vitally important to how we're developing things, designing things, working with customers, clients, our teams. A lot of different things are changing around the world. So hopefully our WebXR Summit series is giving you that insight to everything that we're producing. So on behalf of myself, thank you so much for joining today as well, joining Linda and Samantha and the rest of our team. Your insight is so valuable to the content that we produce in these upcoming summits, because there's no point in doing it unless we actually listen to people who are building and creating. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today.
I can't top that. It was great seeing everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to reach out to so many of you on LinkedIn because I love what you're all working on.
Oh yeah, so exciting. So exciting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.
See you in a couple weeks, guys.
Yeah, don't forget to join us on our Discord channel to keep the conversation going, okay? Stay tuned, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.